we know that we're all responsible for each other, and it's the same with food. It's the same with buying, serving, eating food. It's a community activity. It's a shared thing.
Hello, and welcome to the Power of the Public Plate podcast, brought to you by ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and the UN One Planet Network, with your host, myself, Josefine Hintz, based in ICLEI's Berlin office, responsible for global initiatives of sustainable, innovative, and circular procurement.
And I'm Peter Defranceschi, running ICLEI's Brussels office and global food program. ICLEI is a European and global network of local and regional governments committed to integrated sustainable development.
And the UN One Planet Network works as a multi-stakeholder community across 6 programs, one of which is committed to the implementation of sustainable public procurement globally.
In this podcast, we explore the stories of champions of food procurement around the world.
In each episode, we bring you insightful and inspiring stories of how the public sector can influence the food value chain by leveraging its purchasing power.
Join us as we talk to public sector staff, policy advisors, and experts to learn how to support smallholder farmers, serve healthy and nutritious meals, source locally and climate friendly.
Today, I'm joined by Andrea, Villaroman, and Ma-An Rosales-Santo Domingo, working for Quezon City in the Philippines. Andrea is the head of Environmental Protection and Waste Management Department at Quezon City Government. As such, she spearheads programs and projects on climate change mitigation and adaptation, as well as environmental sustainability and community engagement. Ma-An is a public interest lawyer in the Philippines. She is currently the project manager of Imagine Law, a civil society organization that develops and advocates for evidence-based public health policy solutions. Ma-An leads Imagine Law's Healthy Diets program that consists of a healthy public food procurement project. In this episode, we dive deep into how the city embarked on a process towards serving healthy, locally sourced meals in schools, hospitals, and public sector canteens. The new procurement program also connects with achieving the city's climate targets and educating citizens about healthy eating. It is a story of understanding procurement and the food system as two very powerful tools to build community, especially inspired by times of crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic. And now I bring you Andrea Villaroman and Ma-An Rosales-Santo Domingo. It's really nice to connect with you and to talk about sustainable food purchasing in Quezon City. I think that it's really an honor to sit down with you, Andrea and Man, today. How about we start with just getting the bigger picture a bit about Quezon City and kind of why sustainable food purchasing matters so much, and kind of this commitment to having no unhealthy meals served by public funds. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, actually, the Quezon City mayor now, Mayor Joy Belmonte, has always been an advocate of healthy diets. In fact, one of her flagship projects during the time that she was vice mayor of Quezon City was the Joy of Urban Farming, and it has been running for more than 10 years. The aim of this project is for families to easily access vegetables from their home gardens and the community farms that we have organized with various stakeholders. So when she got elected as mayor last 2019, and when we attended the C40 forum in Copenhagen last October 2019, she signed the C40 Good Food Declaration, which furthered her advocacy as one of the commitments in that declaration was to align the city's food procurement policy to the planetary health diet and also increase our plant-based food consumption, among others. And then it was very timely that Imagine Law came to Quezon City government and offered their assistance through the implementation of the nutrition policy that we have now.
Yeah, this collaboration is very unique from what I've read. Maybe Man, kind of, can you tell us from Imagine Law's side, why is food purchasing and urban food so important?
Yes. Well, first of all, I wanted to echo Andrea's comment earlier that really Quezon City is a pioneer in sustainable food systems and improving urban agriculture. So all of these pieces, they all came together. And when we came into the picture, we wanted to work with Quezon City primarily because they already have so much to begin with. And in our case, on the part of a civil society organization like Imagine Law, we're always looking for ways to improve the or alleviate the burden of non-communicable diseases. And we know that food is one thing that we consume every day, and we put inside our bodies and affects our nutrition, our health directly. And now more than ever, we're here experiencing this pandemic, we see all the more how important nutrition is in terms of how it affects our comorbidities, or it affects our ability to fight off this virus. And that's why I think that's one of the main starting points of why we wanted to work with Quezon City on healthy food procurement.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective on it's so important also for the local population, right? I don't know, Andrea, if you can share a bit more about how is the kind of Quezon City kind of how are you linking this responsibility from city government to citizens and kind of the different generations on why a healthy diet matters so much? Like, what are some of the issues that you're looking to tackle with this?
Yeah, well, this is an anecdote actually during our workshops that during the pandemic, we realized that we have a lot of officials, even city officials and our local officials in the community that have comorbidities. So then we realized that this is a very timely project because we will be able to introduce in our local food procurement policy the application of the nutrition guidelines in all our procurement related activities. So that's when we also met some of the nutritionists from various departments, and they told us that they have been waiting for the longest time to have this in place, and also the teachers and the public school parents were also very interested because they want to be healthier given the risk posed by the pandemic. So really, the pandemic pushed this forward and made it easier for us to even introduce the nutrition policy to the stakeholders. So for our city government officials, it was very smooth as well. Because most of the officials are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. So, really, the introduction of nutrition guidelines is very appropriate for their age. Like me, I'm also in my 40s. So, introducing that in our families is a good opportunity also when we learned of these nutrition guidelines.
So it's really good timing then.
Right, right. Very good timing.
Right. To add to that, Andrea and Josephine, I wanted to mention that healthy food procurement affects not only the burden of the actual procurement of food, but it also affects and impacts how the government spends its money in terms of how it carries the burden of public health care costs due to diseases caused by food and caused by diet related diseases. And in the same way, it also enables government to save on public health care costs and be able to allocate these savings towards other needs and other response activities of the government. So really it all, comes together.
Right. With more than 3 million population for Quezon City and with more than 10,000 employees, I think, of the city government, this shift would have a very good impact not only on their well-being, but also of the families and the stakeholders that they serve.
Yeah, I mean, this is touching on a very important point, which is always with sustainable procurement, there's always this thinking, oh, is it not more expensive? But what you're proposing is kind of a new way to look at the cost, right? It's not looking at only the purchasing cost.
Right. I think at this point, when we realize that nutrition and having an institution working to advance this goal is something that we have a responsibility of, because at the end of the day, what we put in our body is our well-being's future. So I think at this point, that is very relevant. That's why we are very fortunate that we have introduced this project at this point in time.
Absolutely. Let's take a step back because I really want to get into the practicalities of the project and kind of know how it started. And Andrea, you already mentioned that there was the Good Food Declaration. And kind of, can you walk us through kind of how did this pilot project start? Kind of who was involved? What was the ambition?
Yeah, okay. So C40 has several networks, and one of which is the food related network that we have been working with, but only on food waste and on food waste reduction and food loss reduction. But when the C40 Good Food Declaration was signed, we also were introduced to another track with it, which is the healthy public food procurement and the planetary introduction of the planetary health diet. So as we all know, when we procure food outside of our city, we generate a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. We produce that through the transport sector that has to transport all these vegetables from the provinces, which is far from Quezon City and in Metro Manila. So this started it all, the intention to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the tracks that have been identified is having the local sources revitalized, so that we don't need to depend on other sources, and therefore having healthy food easily accessible to the communities that we serve. And also, our farmers, we have set up our local farmers. It used to be just community gardens or home gardening, but now we have hectares and hectares of land, idle lots, converted into urban farms. So I think this matched all the intentions of the city government to be self-sustainable in terms of providing food, and also reducing our greenhouse gas emissions along the way.
I just wanted to add on to what Andrea mentioned earlier, and kind of walk you through the whole process of developing the healthy public food procurement policy of Quezon City. Because of that goal of Quezon City to uh, achieve its commitment and meet its commitment with C40, we began with the project through an assessment of the policy landscape. So we did a legal and institutional assessment of food procurement policies. And at the same time, alongside that, is a nutritional assessment of the food environment in Quezon City. So we were able to assess the nutritional value of food that's being served in public hospitals, daycare centers, reception centers, and rehabilitation centers, even relief packs. And we're very happy to note that a lot of work, a lot of thoughtful work has already been going on there, and there's only consistency to work with. But so that formed the basis of our policy development. And then we entered into a phase of open policy making. We call it open because we try to engage as many stakeholders as possible, as high level as the city mayor, Mayor Belmonte herself, her executive committee, of which Andrea is part of, the city health department, the registered nutritionists, dietitians of the city, and even the kitchen cooks and staff, the food suppliers, and the beneficiaries. So all of these stakeholders were consulted in the development of the policy, which I think contributed a lot to the ownership of Quezon City of this initiative. And from that, we were able to develop linkages with all of these different departments and initiatives and programs of Quezon City, as Andrea mentioned earlier, the initiative with community farms, urban farms, and this is very this is really something commendable because Quezon City, for a bit of context, a highly urbanized city. So there's not much land if you come to think about it, but they were able to make it happen in Quezon City and have that much land just because of their commitment to sustainable food systems. And then it went on to a training program for all of these stakeholders. And finally, we were able to get our proof of concept through a pilot implementation of the policy. And now we're here. We're about to try the first tenders and the first procurements of healthy food starting January of next year.
Yeah, actually, we have included that the policy in the budget call for fiscal year 2022, which means that all procured food starting January 2022 has to be compliant with the nutrition guidelines. It has been institutionalized through our City Finance Committee. And in the next few months, we will be discussing a local policy to make sure that this is not just an executive order that they can ignore, but there are ordinances that we are now preparing with the City Council.
Can you help us understand or perhaps map out a bit more who are you procuring for as a city? Is it schools or is it public sector canteens? Just to understand the scope of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, okay. Because face-to-face meetings have been limited for the past 2 years, normally what we procure is food for our meetings, our workshops. We also have a lot of facilities for, let's say, senior citizens, the vulnerable sectors, such as the victims of violence against women. So we have centers set up for them, and we have also the different hospitals that we have for Quezon City. We have three city-owned hospitals where we procure the food for them. So these are just some of the institutions that regularly procures food for their clients. And also for the schools, we have a division of city schools which we tap for its implementation. However, at this point, because our schools are closed, we just use the platform to make our teachers and parents aware of the nutrition guidelines. But as soon as they open, the same policy will be implemented in the school canteens.
So you're very much right now educating as well, kind of taking this awareness raising role.
Right. And also, since we have special concern lockdown areas, we call that for those areas that have high cases of COVID, we provide them a supply of food, which also applies the nutrition guidelines. So instead of just providing them with canned goods, which are very accessible in our supermarkets, now we make sure that vegetables and fruits are included in the relief packs. So we also do this for our evacuation centers. Right now, we have several typhoons coming in already. So when we set up evacuation centers, we make sure that the food that we serve our evacuees are also healthy and nutritious.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that that because of this pioneering work by Quezon City, they're sparking interest. They're sparking this kind of growing movement among other local government units in trying to procure healthy food. And I think of course, at the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal, to be able to inspire action not only from our within our own backyard but even beyond it, and Quezon City is doing precisely that.
Yeah, it sounds like that you're really getting to a lot of stakeholders involved and really reaching a lot of people and kind of be a role model for families in that regard.
Mhm.
And I'm really interesting to unpack a bit more the process that you man described before. Kind of how did you identify the stakeholders, or how were these discussions going when you really talked to everyone involved in, let's say, the local food system? What were some of the themes you discussed? Were there issues, tensions?
Well, really, this is the best part, I think, of the work. It's being able to talk to the stakeholders who would not only be part of the process of developing the policy, but would benefit a lot from it. And based from our conversations with Quezon City, so we started we started with a mapping of stakeholders together with Quezon City. We mapped out from top to bottom all of the beneficiaries who would be involved in policy making, would be involved in implementing the policy, down to who would be benefiting, who would be the beneficiaries of this policy. And we really tried our best to, talk to as many people as possible, to as many sectors as possible, because we understand that everyone is facing something different, something unique that they can contribute to this. And in food procurement, in implementing nutrition standards, it's quite surprising that there has been very very limited tension, if any. There has been jokes about it, how hard it would be to implement, how it would be to lose your soft drinks or to lose your favorite sweets. But ultimately, everyone was very excited about it. And I think the whole change in this attitude and in this appreciation just started with one step, with a single step to understand that, we're not taking away all of these things that you like or you love, but we're making sure that the food that you take in wouldn't contribute to any kind of disease. And surprisingly, even the food suppliers who would be, of course, implementing these nutrition standards, they would be carrying the responsibility of reformulating or replacing ingredients. They were also very excited because they understood the role that they play in the food procurement system. That they're not only sellers of food, but they're part of this community that makes sure that it's healthy and that the food that they serve is, let me put it this way, that the food that they serve to the Quezon City government and its beneficiaries is as good as food that they serve to their families. And you wouldn't serve unhealthy food to your family, right? So there. That's why the policy of Quezon City was very, very well supported. And we hope that it continues all the way to implementation.
Wow, that's beautiful. What you just shared, the sense of community, not only, with the actual kind of neighborhoods or as a kind of citizen community, but also coming together as different stakeholders to only wanting the best for everyone in that regard.
I think in a way the pandemic also brought all of us together, because there's always someone we know that has been infected, or is has a family member who has been infected. And we know that we're all responsible for each other. And it's the same with food. It's the same with buying, serving, eating food. It's a community activity. It's a shared thing.
Absolutely. And drawing from this, I want to build this bridge to also bringing in this kind of climate crisis aspect that Andrea, you touched upon earlier. Kind of, it's not only about healthy meals and nutrition and all of that kind of local sourcing, but in Quezon City, you're also trying to achieve climate goals, right? With this food policy.
Yeah, actually, we have committed a reduction of 30% from the business as usual scenario for greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. So, when we thought of introducing the healthy public food procurement, definitely in terms of the transport sector, that would have a lot of contribution in implementing this project. So, I think COVID and the health and the environment goes hand in hand. It cannot be treated separately. In fact, when we introduced the recovery plan for COVID, we introduced that it has to be people and planet first. That's why it's a co-benefit approach that we introduced, and this has been the standard project for all city government initiatives, that we consider planet and people and planet first before we even introduce other initiatives for growth. Just recently, there is an economic development meeting wherein the same platform, the same framework has been used. uh, giving importance to health and the environment in all aspects of our operations.
I think with food, it's such a unique sector as well that really brings together so many aspects. And you're now mentioning this kind of people and planet first, and kind of having this as a recovery vehicle as well. With the climate mitigation, where do you see the opportunity in the food sector? Is it mainly about the kind of transport emissions, or is it different aspects there as well, where you see an opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah, I think essentially it's also the type of food that we eat. Normally, when we consume more vegetables and more fruits, there's a reduction in the food waste that we produce. Rather than consuming the other unhealthier foods like the ones that are packed pre-packed. So these are normally this normally has packaging that goes into the landfill. This normally has food waste in meal preparation. So when we consume more plant-based food and more fruits for our constituents, I think that also lessens the food waste that we produce. And when we reduce our food waste, we also reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
And man, what's your perspective on bringing in this kind of climate crisis angle into food purchasing together with healthy diets?
Yes, well, I think, when we talk about sustainable food systems, really it's the relationship between all of these different factors interacting and working together. And I'm glad that Andrea mentioned it earlier. You cannot talk about a single problem by itself. We understand that, our problems, the problems that we're dealing with today, whether it comes to disease or epidemics or climate change, are all linked together to with other aspects of our life and our even our community habits. So I'm glad that this policy on healthy public food procurement is able to generate a lot of what we call side effects, in not only in terms of healthy eating, but as well as in making sure that um, the environment is able to benefit from that change in the diet, as well as in the change in the type of food that is being bought. So really, the goal is to make sure to see the linkages between the economic, between the environmental, between health and nutrition. And I'm glad that Quezon City is, moving towards that direction.
Yeah, really harnessing the power of the public plate to create a diversity of side effects. I do want to take the opportunity just to kind of look ahead and try to imagine together how a procurement in the future in Quezon City would look like in terms of food. So let's say it's March 2022, you're kicking off the first pilots. Kind of how would a procurement now look different to before you had this urban food kind of policy in place?
Well, I think looking our ways forward is very bright because even the mayor herself declared that no public funds will be spent on unhealthy food, and even the vice mayor also supported the initiative. We have a lot of councillors. We have 36 councillors going around the city and providing these services to our constituents. So we also gained that support from the vice mayor and the city council. So I think next year, once we pilot this will be a welcome development for the city government and its employees, even for the procurement of their own food using their own funds. I think it would redound to applying the same nutrition guidelines that we have for city funded projects. A lot has been happening since the time this was introduced in Quezon City, and we are very excited. The city mayor is very excited to launch several side initiatives with the help, of course, of Imagine Law, who has initiated this in Quezon City.
Yeah, and I like how we're thinking ahead, and I can only imagine that the change that we're seeing now, that it's beginning, would snowball into something that would have a larger impact. Right now, even well, even before the healthy public food procurement policy was enacted during the earlier stages of development, we've been seeing already a lot of changes. As Andrea mentioned earlier, from procurement of canned goods that are, really high in sodium and fat and sugar content. They've been changing those relief packages into fresh fruits and vegetables, and we've been seeing less waste as well because of lesser packaging and more biodegradable types of packaging. So I can imagine that over the next couple of months, once the first procurement of a healthy food would be coming in, it would be much lighter, much healthier, and hopefully, definitely a lot more sustainable for the Quezon City community.
And how would you describe a meal that would be served, for instance, in a hospital going forward? Can you give us a good picture of that?
Sure. Well, in the hospitals, we're seeing, well, as I've mentioned earlier, we did implement a very short pilot implementation period of 2 weeks to around a month in the public hospitals, and we saw how that changed from mainly using canned goods that they've already procured as part of their meals. They were able to change how they prepare their food and what types of ingredients that they use. So they use less salt, they use less sugar, they use less oil, but instead they use natural herbs and spices. They were able to also utilize the local fruits and vegetables produced in the urban farms, and really it's really a healthier plate and a much more sustainable plate. They were able to incorporate indigenous vegetables that are grown in the urban farms, and we're very very happy to see that big change.
Yeah, just to add, uh, the group of Imagine Law introduced us to what we call Pinggang Pinoy. This is the Filipino plate. So because of that art, that design that was introduced to us, we are very much aware for every meal that we eat, we apply that Filipino plate that we have in our discussion. So that has been also the intention of having introduced a more I think realistic and more doable approach for the hospitals, for the daycare centers, for the city government departments that have been involved, for them to really appreciate what Imagine Law is introducing to the Quezon City government. So we have that plate in our minds every day, every time we serve our food, every time we eat.
Thanks, Miss Andrea. We even gave placemats. so there's a sample pinggang Pinoy, or the sort of division or the food portions of your how much vegetable you should eat, how much fruit you should eat, rice and fish or its alternative. What's surprising though is actually these are based from the Philippine dietary guidelines from uh, years back. But really, until you're able to concretize it and be able to bring it to someone like Andrea in the Quezon City government who can make that change, it's just a it's just a concept until it's actually realized.
Absolutely, it has to be implemented for sure. And with that, and being mindful of your time as well, but I do need to ask, what are some words of wisdom for the two of you to share with fellow procurers, policymakers, public sector staff, in terms of why does sustainable food procurement matter so much, and how to start?
Yeah, I think what was really uh, surprising in introducing this initiative is that it was very well accepted given the timing as well because of the COVID pandemic. But also in doing the process, we have identified the champions from the city government that will push this forward to other city government employees that we have. That influence really is something that jumpstart our implementation of the nutrition guidelines. And also at this time where healthy food is no longer a fad, I think our message to our constituents is that healthy food doesn't mean that it is going to be an expensive alternative. So we realize that along the way that we have enough Filipino food that are healthy. We just need to promote that, and we just need to be aware that this would benefit us along the way. And I think the political will at the end of the day also spark our interest, our drive to really fully materialize this initiative. And coming from the mayor down to the employees and now even to the residents, I think we have that local acceptance on healthy public food procurement. And hopefully, through the years, even without the pandemic, after the pandemic has been resolved, and after we have gone to our normal way of living, we hope that this continues as not just an advocacy, but a way of life.
Right. I'm really happy to hear that from Andrea. And it really boils down to that. First, um you have to have good champions who will carry this kind of idea that's probably new, probably uncomfortable for some, probably something that others would hesitate to try. But uh just making taking that first step to be able to try something new, something that would improve the nutritional status, the health of your citizens, will take it will go a long way, and that is what Mayor Belmonte has done for Quezon City. It's as you mentioned earlier, healthy is usually equated to expensive, but in Quezon City, we were able to discover that it's a matter of thinking outside of the box and thinking of how much more I can do with my food, um, how much I value what I put inside my body, how much I value its impact, or how much I appreciate its impact into the environment. And really, it's mindful eating, mindful purchasing, mindful preparation of the food that all comes together to be able to achieve that result of improved health status, improved environmental management that is what sustainable food systems are about. And I think what Andrea mentioned about having strong champions in within the government is a result of proactive engagement of stakeholders, and being policy making as human centered. You're Because you're able to engage and see, put a human face behind this kind of advocacy. And once, of course, you see the person behind healthy food, for example, or the person behind who prepares your food, and you're able to appreciate what challenges they're going through, what what new ideas they want to bring to the table, that really drove the policy to where it is now. And that's how Quezon City is able to eat healthy.
That's really beautiful. Thank you both for sharing it. And it sounds to me like it's really about the community, and it's about acknowledging that the procurement of products and services is much more than an administrative exercise. It actually matters very much, and it has to be done mindfully and purposefully, and it can be a major game changer for a city government such as Quezon City. I thank the two of you very, very much, and I can't wait to witness what you're going to achieve from next year onwards once you're implementing really on this new policy.
Yeah, we're very excited too. Exciting times ahead.
Indeed, very excited for everyone. We have a very good technical working group that I might say is one of also the key factors why we were able to forge all the ideas from the different departments. These technical working group members have been very vital in the acceptance of the new policy, because they have been the champions of our initiative, not just for our city government operations, but their families as well.
Yeah, so having the technical expertise in house is vital. So kudos to the team in Quezon City as well.
Well, it was very difficult, really, because we had to shift to online workshops. Most of our attendees were in their 40s and 50s who were not familiar with Zoom in the initial stages of our project implementation, but later they were all experts in the online workshop.
Amazing. It's so inspiring how you use this time of crisis and kind of a global pandemic to really innovate and, as you said, think outside of the box to set up a program that is going to provide a healthy and kind of planet conscious diet and the Filipino plate to your constituents. All right, I think we landed this plane very well. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity.
What an inspiring story. Really, the procurement work impacts how the food is grown and produced and cooked and what is offered for consumption. It really is a commitment towards a healthy society and planet. Thank you again to Andrea and Ma'an for joining us today on the Power of the Public Plate podcast and for their amazing work in Quezon City. To learn more about their program, check out the details in the episode description. And if you like this podcast, you can support us by sharing it with your colleagues and friends. We invite you to check out all the other episodes and to connect with us on Twitter or on our websites, the UN One Planet Network, as well as at ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. Thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.